The gentle hum of the electric motor was music to my ears as I pulled into my driveway at the end of a long day. My brand new electric van, a sleek and silent marvel of technology, sat proudly where I'd parked it. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a statement, a commitment to the future. To clean energy, to progress. Living in Willow Creek Estates was supposed to be a dream come true. The quiet streets, the friendly neighbors, the beautiful homes, all nestled under the watchful eyes of the Homeowners Association. I'd done my homework before moving here, studied the HOA rules, paid my fees on time, and made sure to follow every regulation. Or so I thought. When I first bought the van, I even called the HOA office to confirm the parking rules. The representative on the phone assured me, as long as your vehicle is parked on your property, there should be no problem. That conversation reassured me enough to park the van in my driveway every night without a second thought. So imagine my shock when I found the bright red envelope slipped under my front door one afternoon. Violation notice. Unauthorized commercial vehicle parking. I tore it open and read the fine amount. $80,000. $80,000. The paper was stamped with the official HOA seal, and the words felt like a punch in the gut. My personal vehicle, my electric van, was being labeled a commercial vehicle, a violation of the parking policy, and worse. The fine was non-negotiable. I sat down hard in my living room, heart pounding. This had to be a mistake. I grabbed the phone and dialed the HOA's enforcement office immediately. This has to be wrong, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My van is my personal vehicle. It's electric, environmentally friendly, and it's parked on my own property. How can this be a commercial vehicle? The woman on the other end was firm but dismissive. Our parking regulations clearly define vehicles like yours, due to size and utility features, as commercial vehicles. It doesn't matter if it's electric or not. The fine is $80,000 and must be paid within 30 days. I blinked in disbelief. There's no room for discussion. Unfortunately not, she said. This is standard enforcement. I hung up, feeling the walls close in. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules, they were making an example out of me. But why? As days passed, I began to hear whispers from neighbors. Some sympathized, others warned me to be careful. Rumors spread that the HOA board was cracking down on anyone they saw as different or difficult. I was just the latest target. Determined to fight back, I started digging through the HOA's bylaws and parking policies. I discovered vague language about commercial vehicles, but nothing that explicitly mentioned electric vans or even accounted for new technology. I also reached out to other residents, quietly gathering stories from people who'd faced fines or threats for minor infractions, some seemingly trivial, others downright unfair. It became clear the HOA was using outdated rules to flex their power, and I was caught in the crosshairs. But I wasn't about to let $80,000 disappear with a shrug. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a pile of papers, my laptop, and a growing determination. I called my attorney, a sharp and fearless woman named Carla, who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. Carla's voice was calm but serious on the phone. This is going to be a battle, she warned. HOAs can be brutal when they want to be, but your case has merit, especially with how they're defining commercial vehicle. We'll need to prepare for I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The fight was just beginning, and I knew the HOA hadn't seen the last of me. Ending hook for part 1. As I stared at the glowing van parked outside, I had no idea this battle would uncover secrets the HOA desperately wanted to hide, secrets that could turn the entire community upside down. The next morning, I woke with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let the HOA steamroll me. Not after the unfair $80,000 fine slapped on my personal electric van. This was more than just a parking dispute. It was about standing up to an organization that thought it could dictate every inch of my life. I started by drafting a detailed letter to the HOA board. I laid out my case clearly. The van was a personal vehicle, not commercial. The HOA's own rules didn't define electric vans as commercial vehicles, and the fine was not only unjust but exorbitant. I demanded the fine be rescinded immediately. That same day, I sent it via certified mail and requested an official meeting with the board. Hours later, my phone rang. It was Carla, my attorney. Her tone was serious. I've been reviewing the HOA's bylaws, and there are loopholes we can exploit, but I've also found some unusual clauses about community standards and vehicle aesthetics vague enough that they might try to manipulate them against you. I nodded, biting my lip. The legal landscape was murky, but I wasn't going to back down. When the meeting day arrived, I walked into the clubhouse with my head held high. The room was filled with familiar faces, the board members, including Marlene, the HOA president, who had given me the fine. Her smile was thin and cold. Marlene started the meeting with practiced ease. We've reviewed your letter, and, while we sympathize with your concerns, the decision stands. Your van violates the community's parking regulations. I responded calmly. Marlene, my van is fully street legal, non-commercial, and parked on my property. I asked for clarification before purchasing it. This fine is unjust. A tense silence fell over the room. Then, Greg, the board's legal advisor, chimed in. We are simply enforcing rules designed to preserve property values and aesthetics. Large vehicles disrupt the neighborhood's appearance. I frowned. Are you seriously using my van's size and utility features as grounds for an $80,000 fine? What about the SUVs and trucks in this community? Are they all under the same scrutiny? Marlene's eyes narrowed. This case is unique. The meeting dragged on, with back-and-forth arguments and thinly veiled threats about escalating fees and legal action. I could feel the board's determination to break me. After the meeting, whispers circulated around the neighborhood. Some neighbors whispered about how I was rocking the boat, while others privately expressed support. But Marlene's icy glare when she passed me told me this fight was far from over. Back home, I began noticing strange things. Tire tracks in my backyard where no vehicle should have been, odd noises late at night, and unexplained power fluctuations. In my house, someone was watching, maybe even trying to intimidate me. One evening, my security cameras captured a shadowy figure lurking near my van. I called the police and filed a report, but the officers shrugged it off as a neighborhood prank still. The message was clear. The HOA wasn't just sending letters anymore. They were willing to escalate. I met with Carla again, sharing the new developments. She warned me to document everything, every interaction, every incident. If this escalates to court, this evidence will be crucial. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the fine, the threats, and the hidden motives behind the HOA's aggressive stance. What were they really trying to protect, and why me? Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Some things are better left alone. My blood ran cold. This was no longer a simple dispute. It was personal. The anonymous text still echoed in my mind. Stop digging. Some things are better left alone. It was a warning, plain and simple, but I wasn't about to give up. If anything, it made me more determined to find out what the HOA was hiding. Behind its polished exterior that weekend, I started digging through public records, HOA meeting minutes, and property deeds. What I found was unsettling. There were irregularities in how the HOA had handled permits and fees related to commercial vehicles and parking regulations over the years. Several board members had quietly approved exceptions for certain residents, and contractors exceptions that blatantly contradicted the rules they were enforcing against me. Why was my van, one of the cleanest and most eco-friendly vehicles on the street, suddenly a threat? Why was I being singled out for a massive $80,000 fine, when others got away with parking oversized trucks and even commercial vehicles right on their driveways? Then, deeper into the documents, I uncovered a suspicious pattern of financial transactions. Between the HOA and a local towing company, my heart skipped a beat. That company was run by one of the board members, a man with a reputation for aggressive towing and hefty fees. The pieces began to fall into place. The fine wasn't just about parking, it was about money and control. The HOA had been using inflated fines to force residents into paying large sums or risk losing their vehicles to towing, conveniently handled by their associates company. Armed with this knowledge, I called Carla. Immediately. This is huge, she said after I briefed her. If we can prove collusion between the HOA and the towing company, it could blow the entire case wide open. It might even expose corruption within the board. We decided to file a formal complaint with the local Consumer Protection Agency and start building a case to challenge the fine, not just for me, but for every resident victimized by this racket. But as we prepared our documents, the intimidation only increased. One night, as I returned home late from a meeting with Carla, I found my driveway blocked by a large, black truck with no markings. I tried to get a closer look, but the driver locked eyes with me through the window and revved the engine menacingly before speeding off. The message was clear. Back off, or face consequences. Inside, my van was untouched. For now, I installed extra cameras, motion sensors, and even a security alarm. But the feeling of being watched lingered. Then, an unexpected ally emerged. Jessica, a longtime neighbor who had stayed silent until now, knocked on my door one afternoon. She was visibly nervous. I've seen what's going on, she whispered. I've dealt with their bullying before. They fined me for putting up a small garden gnome in my yard. You're not alone. Jessica handed me a folder filled with her own battle with the HOA letters, fines, even a small victory where she'd successfully fought back. Her courage sparked a new hope. Together, we started reaching out to other neighbors quietly suffering under the HOA's heavy hand. A small but growing group began to form, residents tired of being intimidated, fined unfairly, and silenced. But the HOA wasn't finished yet. One evening, I received a call from Marlene herself. I suggest you reconsider your actions, she warned. The board is watching. You're playing with fire. I smiled to myself, heart pounding. If they wanted a war, they'd get one, because I wasn't just fighting for my van anymore. I was fighting for the entire neighborhood. Phone call from Marlene left me both rattled and resolute. The HOA board wasn't just an organization enforcing rules. They were a tightly knit group determined to crush anyone who challenged their power. But I wasn't alone anymore. Jessica's courage had sparked a small rebellion. Over the next few days, we quietly reached out to other residents, gathering stories of unjust fines, intimidation, and even suspicious behavior by board members. At first, many were hesitant, afraid of retaliation or ostracization, but as our numbers grew, so did the courage. One by one, neighbors came forward with tales that painted a disturbing picture. A retired teacher fined for repainting her fence the wrong color, a young couple threatened with towing over a birthday party parked car, and many others who simply wanted peace in their own homes. I organized a meeting in my backyard one warm evening. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting soft light on a circle of wary faces. This isn't just about me, I told them. It's about standing up to an HOA that's forgotten who it's supposed to serve. We can fight this together. Jessica nodded. They're using outdated rules and dirty tricks to line their pockets and control us. We deserve better. The plan was simple but bold. Form a neighborhood committee to challenge the HOA board at the upcoming annual meeting. We'd bring evidence of their corruption, question the towing contracts, and push for transparency. But the HOA was already preparing their own strategy. Days later, I noticed a flyer slipped under several doors, anonymous but clearly targeting me. Beware of the homeowner causing unrest, it read. Is this the example we want for Willow Creek Estates? It was a thinly veiled threat, yet the flyer had the opposite effect. It galvanized more residents to our cause. Meanwhile, Carla worked tirelessly on legal filings and gathering evidence. She discovered an obscure clause buried in the HOA's charter, allowing the board to impose emergency fines without member approval, a loophole they'd exploited to justify the $80,000 fine. We knew exposing this could force a legal overhaul, but there was a catch. To force transparency, we needed to hold a special meeting, and the board controlled the meeting schedules. One evening, as I walked past the community center, I overheard two board members whispering urgently, "It's getting out of hand," one said. "If the residents find out about the towing deal, the whole board could be exposed." The other replied, "We need to delay the special meeting as long as possible." By time, that night, I realized the stakes were higher than I imagined. The HOA wasn't just about rules. They were protecting a secret profit machine. I sent a message to the committee. Prepare for a fight. This won't be easy, but it's the only way. The days leading up to the annual meeting were tense. Phone calls, emails, and late-night strategy sessions filled every spare moment. On the evening of the meeting, the community hall was packed. Supporters, skeptics, and board members all gathered under one roof. Marlene opened the meeting with a tight smile. "We're here to discuss community matters." But when I stood up to speak, the room shifted. I presented our evidence, the financial links between the board and the towing company, the unfair fines, and the lack of transparency. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Marlene's face darkened. "This is slander. We have the community's best interests at heart." Jessica followed with her story, a heartfelt account of the bullying and fines she'd endured. The tension mounted as more neighbors added their voices. Then, unexpectedly, a few board members shifted in their seats, looking uncomfortable. It was clear cracks were forming. But before I could feel relief, Marlene raised her hand sharply. "I call for a vote to end this meeting." The board rushed to close the session, but the room erupted with shouts, demanding answers. The battle for Willow Creek Estates had truly begun. The chaos in the community hall was like nothing I'd ever experienced. Voices rose in a storm of accusations, demands, and pleas. The board's attempt to shut down the meeting had only fueled the fire. I stood firm, heart pounding, as neighbors rallied around me. It was clear the tide was turning. Marlene's sharp calls for order barely kept the meeting from descending into full-blown chaos. But the pressure was on. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, stepping up to the microphone, "this is our community. We deserve transparency, fairness, and respect. We cannot allow a few individuals to run this place for their own profit." The room erupted in applause. The momentum was palpable. Several board members began shifting uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Jessica, standing beside me, caught my eye and nodded. We were united. Then came the vote, a motion to demand an independent audit of the HOA's finances and contracts, including the towing company deal. The room fell silent as ballots were collected. When the results were announced, it was overwhelming. The majority had voted in favor. Marlene's face tightened with anger. "This is an abusive process," she said coldly. "I will be consulting our legal counsel immediately." But the damage was done. The community had spoken. The following days were a whirlwind. The independent audit revealed a web of questionable transactions, inflated fees, and conflicts of interest, including undisclosed kickbacks from the towing company to the board members. Public outrage grew. Several residents demanded the resignation of the entire board, under mounting pressure. Marlene and a few other board members resigned abruptly, leaving the HOA scrambling to fill their positions. A special election was scheduled, and the community rallied to elect new board members who promised transparency and fairness. Meanwhile, Carla helped me file a formal dispute of the $80,000 fine with the local courts, armed with the audit findings and evidence of corruption. But the fight wasn't over. One morning, I found a notice taped to my van's windshield. Final warning, pay, fine, or vehicle will be towed. The new board members, though more transparent, seemed cautious, unwilling to confront the towing company directly, determined not to let the intimidation continue. I organized a neighborhood patrol group to monitor suspicious activity and prevent illegal towing attempts. Word spread, and soon the HOA's heavy-handed tactics began to falter. The once quiet streets buzzed with a renewed sense of community, strength, and vigilance. Yet through it all, I knew one thing for sure. The $80,000 fine was just the beginning. The battle to reclaim our neighborhood's soul was far from over. Just when I thought the worst was behind us, a new storm was brewing beneath the surface of Willow Creek Estates. The independent audit had exposed corruption at the board level, but Carla's continued investigation uncovered something far more sinister. Late one evening, as Carla sifted through leaked financial records and vendor contracts, she found a coded payment trail leading to an anonymous shell company. This wasn't just about towing kickbacks anymore. It was a tangled network of hush money, bribery, and property manipulation. The shell company, it turned out, was linked to a large development firm eyeing Willow Creek Estates for a massive commercial project, a luxury mall and high-rise condos that would forever change the neighborhood. The current board, along with certain influential residents, had been bribed to suppress opposition and clear the path for this development. It explained the ruthless fines, the intimidation, and the sudden aggressive stance against anyone who challenged the HOA's authority, including me. The $80,000 fine wasn't just about parking my van. It was a warning to silence resistance and keep property values flexible for the developers. I felt a cold rage burning inside me. This was bigger than a personal fight. It was about the future of our entire community. I called an emergency meeting with the neighborhood committee. We're facing a threat that goes beyond petty fines, I told them, spreading out the documents Carla had gathered. If this development goes through, our homes, our lives, everything we value will be changed forever. Jessica's eyes widened. How do we stop it? Carla chimed in. We need to expose the bribery, rally public support, and bring this fight to City Hall and the press. Transparency is our greatest weapon. But the danger escalated quickly. The day after our meeting, my van was vandalized, slashed tires, scratched paint, and threatening graffiti spray-painted on the side. Back off or pay the price. I reported it to the police, but evidence was scarce, and I knew this was an intimidation tactic. Undeterred, we launched a campaign. Flyers were distributed, social media groups formed, and local reporters started paying attention. Public pressure mounted, and city officials agreed to hold a public hearing on the proposed development. But as the hearing date approached, so did the threats. One night, a window in my home shattered mysteriously. A rock had been thrown through it with a note attached. Last warning. Fear crept into our neighborhood, but so did resolve. At the public hearing, dozens of neighbors packed the room. I spoke first, detailing the corruption and the looming threat to our community's character. Jessica shared her story of fighting the HOA's bullying tactics. Other residents chimed in, revealing their fears of losing their home's value and the neighborhood's charm. The developers tried to downplay the opposition, but the mounting evidence of corruption and public outcry forced city sleuth officials to delay any approvals. The fight had reached a critical tipping point. The city hearing was a milestone, a beacon of hope shining through the dense fog of corruption. But the shadows lurking in Willow Creek Estates weren't ready to give up so easily. 2 nights after the hearing, I came home to find my mailbox smashed, papers scattered, and a chilling message scrawled on my front door in red paint. Stop digging, or else. Jessica and I exchanged worried glances. It was clear the threats were escalating, and the people behind them were desperate, but the community's spirit was stronger than fear. At our next neighborhood meeting, more residents showed up than ever before, all ready to stand their ground. Carla warned us. They're trying to intimidate you into silence, but we have to stay united. Exposure is their weakness. We organized a volunteer watch group to patrol the streets at night, and I installed even more security cameras around my property. Meanwhile, Carla and I worked closely with a local investigative journalist, Maya, who was eager to dig deeper into the HOA and developers' dealings. Maya uncovered evidence of secret meetings between board members and developers, held in luxury hotels and private clubs. Far from the prying eyes of the community, the tangled web of bribery and backdoor deals was more extensive than we imagined. One day, Maya received an anonymous tip about a hidden raw document listing all the illicit payments and favors exchanged. We arranged a covert meeting in a quiet cafe to receive the ledger, wrapped in an unassuming manila envelope. As we examined it, our jaws dropped. Names, dates, amounts, concrete proof that could bring down the corrupt power structure. But possession of the ledger made us targets. That very night, someone tried to break into my garage. The security alarm blared, scaring off the intruder. But it was clear the stakes were rising. We shared the ledger with Maya, who prepared a comprehensive expose for the local newspaper. Publication day arrived, and the article hit like a bombshell. The community was shocked but galvanized. City officials promised a full investigation, and pressure mounted on the HOA board. Then came the surprise. Marlene, the former HOA president, called me. "I want to talk," she said, her voice strained, skeptical but curious. I agreed to meet. "Over coffee?" she confessed. "I was part of it, but I didn't realize how deep it went. I want out." She handed me a flash drive with more incriminating evidence, meals, recordings, and contracts that implicated the developers and some city officials. Her change of heart could shift the balance, but danger was closing in fast. The night I met Marlene, my van was once again vandalized, this time worse, with shattered windows and a burnt tire. A final message, last chance. I knew the shadows were striking back with everything they had. The community was at a crossroads. Fight or fold. The night Marlene handed me the flash drive, I felt a surge of hope and the weight of enormous risk. Her evidence was a bombshell. Emails detailing bribes, voice recordings of secret deals, and contracts that could unravel the entire scheme. But with every truth revealed, the danger grew. The next day, Maya published an explosive follow-up article, unveiling the depth of the corruption, the developers' plans, and the HOA's dirty dealings. The city council was forced to act. An emergency investigation was launched, and several board members, along with city officials, were subpoenaed. The developers' project was put on indefinite hold. Meanwhile, Carla and I worked with a legal team to challenge the $80,000 fine. Armed with the new evidence, the court hearing became a public spectacle, with neighbors flooding the courtroom in support. During the trial, the judge was visibly shaken by the revelations. In a landmark ruling, the court not only dismissed the outrageous fine but ordered the HOA to reimburse me for legal fees and damages. The community erupted in celebration. Our victory was a message. Corruption and intimidation wouldn't win here. But the fight left scars. Several families moved away, unwilling to stay in a place marked by betrayal and fear. Others vowed to stay and rebuild. We formed a new HOA, accountable and truly representative. Jessica became a leader in the community, helping neighbors feel safe and heard. The electric van that sparked it all sat proudly in my driveway, a symbol of resistance and resilience. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just a battle over parking or fines. It was about standing up for justice, protecting what's yours, and never backing down even when the odds are stacked against you. Willow Creek Estates is far from perfect, but now, it's ours again. And as for the shadows, they still linger in whispers. But the light we ignited is stronger. The price was high, but the lesson was clear. Never underestimate the power of a community united.